1889, Mississippi. Twins disappeared every September for 7 years. The Greene County Vanishings. The first time it happened was September 15, 1882. The Hartwell twins, Mary and Martha, aged 7, went to sleep in their small bed above the general store and were gone by morning. Their father found only rumpled sheets and 2 small indentations in the pillow where their heads had been. The window was closed. The door was locked from the inside. No one had heard them cry out. Sheriff James Caldwell wrote it down in his ledger with careful letters. Hartwell girls. Missing. No signs of struggle. He didn't know yet that he would write the same words, with different names, 6 more times. Greene County sat in the heart of Mississippi like a cupped hand holding secrets. In 1882, it was still raw from the war, still healing from wounds that ran deeper than anyone wanted to say. The cotton fields stretched out in all directions, broken only by small farms, a handful of stores, and the railroad that carried away their harvest each fall. People minded their own business. They had learned that asking too many questions brought trouble. But children disappearing, that was different. That was everyone's trouble. The Hartwell parents searched for weeks. They walked every road, looked in every barn, called the girls' names until their voices went hoarse. The other families helped at first, bringing food and joining the search parties. But as the days passed and no trace was found, the help grew thin. People had their own children to worry about, their own harvests to bring in, their own fears to quiet. By October, when the leaves turned gold and red, the town had learned to speak about Mary and Martha in whispers, if at all. The 2nd September brought the Johnson twins. Samuel and Simon, aged 9, disappeared from their bedroom in the farmhouse 3 miles outside town. Their mother found their nightclothes folded neat and clean at the foot of the bed, as if someone had taken great care not to disturb anything else. The boys' shoes were lined up by the door. Their Sunday clothes hung untouched in the wardrobe. Sheriff Caldwell rode out that morning with Deputy Thomas Wade, a young man who had just joined the force. They looked at the empty room, at the folded clothes, at the shoes that would never again carry those small feet down dusty roads. Same as the Hartwell girls, Caldwell said quietly, though it wasn't exactly the same. The Hartwell twins had simply vanished. These boys had been taken with ceremony, with purpose. Wade stood at the window, looking out at the cotton fields that stretched to the horizon. He was thinking about his own twin brother, David, who had died of fever when they were 12. He remembered how empty the world had felt with only one heartbeat where there should have been 2. "Sheriff," Wade said, "you think someone's taking them for a reason?" Caldwell didn't answer right away. He was looking at the marks on the wooden floor. Not scuff marks or signs of struggle, but small gouges in the wood, as if someone had dragged heavy chains across the boards. "I think," Caldwell said finally, "that we better start watching the other twins in this county real careful come next September." But watching didn't help. The 3rd year brought the Morrison girls, aged 6. The 4th year, the Fletcher boys, aged 8. The 5th year, the Williams sisters, who were only 4 years old and still slept in a crib together. Each time it was the same pattern. Mid-September, twins. Gone without a sound. Nothing disturbed except the children themselves, as if they had simply decided to step out of the world and into something else. By the 6th year, families with twins had started leaving Greene County in late August. They packed their belongings and traveled to relatives in other states, returning only after October had settled over the land. But some couldn't leave. Some had nowhere to go. The Peterson twins, Anna and Amy, aged 10, were the 6th pair to disappear. Their parents had tried to stay awake all night, taking turns watching the girls' room. But exhaustion is stronger than fear, and sometime in the dark hours before dawn, both parents fell asleep in their chairs. When they woke, their daughters were gone. Mrs. Peterson never recovered. She would sit by the girls' bedroom window for hours, staring out at the road, waiting for 2 small figures to come walking home. She stopped cooking, stopped cleaning, stopped speaking except to whisper her daughters' names. By 1888, the 7th year, the town had changed. Children were kept inside after sunset. Mothers counted their young ones obsessively, like rosary beads worn smooth by desperate fingers. The general store stopped ordering toys in pairs. Church services grew shorter because people wanted to hurry home to check on their families. And still, no one spoke openly about what was happening. It was as if naming the terror would give it more power, make it hungrier. Sheriff Caldwell had grown gray in those 7 years. His ledger was thick with notes, sketches, and unanswered questions. He had written letters to sheriffs in neighboring counties, to marshals in Jackson, to anyone who might have seen or heard of similar disappearances. No one had. Deputy Wade, now 28 and no longer young, had taken to riding the county roads every night in September. He knew every farmhouse, every family, every set of twins that remained. His horse knew the routes by heart. Past the Kowalski farm where 6-year-old twins Pyotr and Pavel slept behind locked shutters. Past the Murphy house where 8-year-old Bridget and Brenna shared a room with their older sister who never slept. It was on one of these rides, on September 12, 1889, that Wade first noticed the house. It sat at the end of a long dirt road, half hidden by oak trees that had grown wild and thick. In all his years of riding these roads, he had somehow never seen it before, though it looked like it had been there forever. The paint was peeling, the shutters hung crooked, and weeds grew high around the porch. But there was smoke rising from the chimney, and warm yellow light glowed in the windows. A wooden sign by the gate read, "Mercy House, Home for Unwanted Children, Sister Margaret, Proprietress." Wade pulled his horse to a stop and stared. In 7 years of investigating the disappearances, no one had ever mentioned an orphanage in Greene County. He would have remembered. He would have checked there first. The light in the windows flickered, and for just a moment, Wade thought he saw small faces pressed against the glass. Children's faces. Pairs of them, side by side, watching the road with eyes that seemed to know more than children should know. His horse stamped restlessly, eager to move away from this place. Wade understood the feeling. Something about the house made his skin crawl, made his chest tight with a fear he couldn't name. But as he sat there in the growing darkness, listening to the whisper of wind through the oak leaves, he realized that he would have to go back. Tomorrow, in the daylight, when he could think more clearly, he would have to go back and ask Sister Margaret about the children who had never come home. Deputy Wade returned to Mercy House the next morning with the sun still low in the sky, casting long shadows across the overgrown yard. In daylight, the house looked different. Older, more tired, like a woman who had carried too many sorrows for too many years. The white paint had turned gray with weather and neglect. The porch sagged under the weight of time. But children's voices drifted from the windows, soft and careful. The way children learn to speak when they know someone is always listening. Wade tied his horse to the broken fence post and walked the narrow path to the front door. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the earth itself was reluctant to let him reach this place. He knocked 3 times, the sound echoing hollow through the morning air. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 50s, dressed in the simple gray dress and white apron of someone who had given her life to service. Her face was kind but worn, like leather left too long in the sun. Her hair was pulled back severe and tight beneath a white cap. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying the soft accent of someone who had been born further south, in the deep parishes where the Spanish moss grew thick and the swamps held their secrets close. "I am Sister Margaret. You must be here about the children." Wade felt something cold move through his chest. "You know why I'm here?" She stepped aside to let him enter. A man doesn't ride past Mercy House at midnight unless he's looking for something he's lost. "Come in, deputy. The children are just finishing their breakfast." The inside of the house smelled of porridge and soap and something else. Something sweet and cloying that reminded Wade of flowers left too long in a closed room. The walls were covered with children's drawings, pictures of houses and trees and families drawn in careful crayon lines. But there was something wrong with the pictures. The families always had empty spaces, like someone had been erased. Sister Margaret led him through a narrow hallway lined with doors. Behind each door, Wade could hear the whisper of small voices, the creak of floorboards under tiny feet. But he never saw a single child. How long has Mercy House been here? Wade asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Since 1881, Sister Margaret replied without looking back. I came here after the fever took so many families. Someone needed to care for the children who had nowhere else to go. 1 year before the first twins disappeared, they entered a small parlor where morning light struggled through windows that hadn't been washed in months. Sister Margaret gestured for Wade to sit in a chair that had been mended too many times. She took the chair across from him, folding her hands in her lap like she was preparing to pray. You want to know about the missing twins? She said. It wasn't a question. Wade leaned forward. Did they come here? Any of them? Sister Margaret was quiet for a long moment, looking at her hands. When she spoke, her voice was soft as dust. They all came here, Deputy. Every one of them. The Hartwell girls. The Johnson boys. All of them. The air in the room seemed to grow thicker. Wade felt his heart beating too fast. When? How long did they stay? Different times. Different lengths. Some came when their parents couldn't feed them anymore. Some came when there was sickness in the house. Some came because their mothers were having new babies and there wasn't room. She looked up at him with eyes that held too much sadness. Children come to Mercy House for many reasons, Deputy. But they all have one thing in common. What's that? No one misses them while they're here. The words hit Wade like a physical blow. He thought of all the families he'd comforted. All the parents who had wept and searched and called their children's names until their voices broke. How could no one have missed them? Sister Margaret must have seen the confusion on his face. Memory is a strange thing, she said quietly. Sometimes people forget what they need to forget. Sometimes they remember only after it's too late. She stood and walked to a window that looked out over the backyard. Wade could see more children's drawings taped to the glass. Pictures of birds in cages, flowers without roots, houses with no doors. Would you like to see where they slept? She asked. Wade's mouth went dry, but he nodded. He had come here for answers, and answers were what he would get, no matter how much they frightened him. Sister Margaret led him through more hallways, past more closed doors. The house seemed bigger on the inside than it had looked from outside, as if it kept growing new rooms to hold new sorrows. They passed a kitchen where Wade glimpsed small figures sitting around a table, but when he looked closer, the room was empty. At the end of a long corridor, Sister Margaret opened a door that led to stairs going down into darkness. The sweet, cloying smell was stronger here, mixed with the scent of damp earth and something else that made Wade's stomach turn. The basement rooms stay cooler in summer, Sister Margaret explained as they descended. The children slept better down here. The stairs creaked under their weight. At the bottom, Sister Margaret lit a lamp that cast flickering shadows on stone walls. The basement had been divided into small rooms, each one barely big enough for a single bed. But Wade could see that some rooms had 2 beds pushed close together. The twins always wanted to sleep side by side, Sister Margaret said, her voice echoing off the stone. Even when they had nightmares. Especially when they had nightmares. Wade stepped into the first room. The beds were neatly made with thin blankets and flat pillows. On the wall between them, scratched deep into the stone, were 2 names, Mary and Martha. Below them, in smaller letters, someone had carved, "We were here." In the next room, Samuel and Simon. In the third, Lucy and Lily Morrison. Room after room, name after name, a roll call of the disappeared carved into stone that would remember them long after everyone else had forgotten. Wade felt his knees go weak. He leaned against the doorframe, trying to steady himself. "Sister Margaret," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "where are they now?" She set the lamp on a wooden crate and looked at him with those sad, knowing eyes. "They're at peace, Deputy. They're where no one can hurt them anymore." "That's not what I asked." Sister Margaret walked to the far end of the basement, where another door stood closed. This one was made of heavy wood and bound with iron straps. It looked older than the house itself, like something that had been moved here from somewhere else. Somewhere darker. "Some children," she said quietly, "are too broken for this world. Some have seen too much, suffered too much. They carry pain that won't heal, no matter how much love you give them. She placed her hand on the iron door handle. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is help them find rest. Wade's hand moved to the gun at his hip. Sister Margaret, I need you to step away from that door. She looked back at him, and for the first time, he saw something other than sadness in her eyes. Something that might have been pity. Oh, Deputy, she said softly. You still don't understand, do you? The children who came here, they were already gone before they arrived. I just helped them finish the journey. The lamp flame flickered, casting dancing shadows on the carved names. Wade realized that in all his years of investigating the disappearances, he had never asked the right question. He had wondered who was taking the children and why and where they went. He had never wondered if anyone would miss them once they learned the truth. Wade left Mercy House with his hands shaking and his heart heavy as stone. He rode back to town through the September heat, but the warmth couldn't touch the cold that had settled in his bones. The carved names in the basement walls followed him like whispers. Mary, Martha, Samuel, Simon, all the children who had been forgotten before they disappeared. Back at the sheriff's office, he sat at his desk and opened the thick ledger where 7 years of sorrow lived in careful handwriting. He turned to the first entry, Hartwell girls. Missing. No signs of struggle. Below it, Sheriff Caldwell had written a note Wade had never noticed before. Parents say girls were never difficult. Quiet children. Easy to forget they were there. Wade's breath caught. He flipped through more pages, reading the notes with new eyes. Johnson boys. Mother says they rarely spoke, kept to themselves. Morrison girls. Father claims they were always obedient, never caused trouble. Fletcher boys, described as invisible children, never demanded attention. Every family had said the same thing in different words. The missing twins had all been quiet children. Forgotten children. The kind who could disappear from memory as easily as they disappeared from their beds. Wade closed the ledger and put his head in his hands. Outside, the afternoon sun beat down on Greene County, and somewhere in that heat, there were still families with twins who slept uneasy in their beds, counting the days until September ended. He thought about his own twin brother, David, who had died when they were 12. David had been the loud one, the one who climbed trees and caught frogs and made their mother laugh. When the fever took him, it left a hole in the world that everyone could see. People still asked about David 20 years later. Still remembered his laugh, his wild hair, his way of making ordinary days feel like adventures. But what if David had been the quiet one? What if he had been the twin who faded into corners, who spoke in whispers, who made himself small so as not to bother anyone? Would people remember him then? Or would he become like the missing children? A shadow that slipped away so quietly that no one noticed until morning came? Wade walked home as the sun set, painting the sky the color of old blood. His house was small and neat, the kind of home a man builds for himself when he knows he'll always live alone. He lit a lamp and sat at his kitchen table, trying to make sense of what Sister Margaret had shown him. The children had all come to Mercy House. All of them. But how had their families forgotten they were there? How had an entire town forgotten that these children had been sent away? He thought about Mrs. Peterson, who still sat by her daughter's window, waiting for them to come home. If Anna and Amy had been at Mercy House, why didn't she remember taking them there? Why didn't anyone remember? Wade opened his kitchen drawer and pulled out a letter he had never sent. He had written it 3 years ago, after the Williams sisters disappeared. It was addressed to the federal marshal in Jackson, asking for help with the investigation. He had written it and sealed it and then sat with it for hours, knowing that sending it would bring strangers to Greene County. Strangers who would ask questions that might uncover secrets the town wasn't ready to tell. In the end, he had put the letter in the drawer and told himself he would send it tomorrow. Tomorrow had become next week, next month, next year. The letter was still there, yellowed with age, sealed with wax that had grown brittle with waiting. Now Wade broke the seal and read his own words from 3 years ago. We need help. Children are disappearing and we cannot find them. I fear something terrible is happening here. Something we cannot solve alone. He had been right then. He was still right now. But understanding the problem and solving it were different things entirely. Wade walked to his bedroom and pulled out a wooden box from under his bed. Inside were David's belongings: a slingshot, a collection of smooth stones, a drawing David had made of the two of them fishing at the creek. Wade picked up the drawing and studied it in the lamplight. David had drawn them as stick figures with big smiles, standing side by side under a happy sun. In the drawing they looked exactly alike. Two boys who shared the same face, the same heart, the same dreams. But Wade remembered the truth. David had been the brave one, the one who spoke up when older boys tried to take their lunch money. Wade had been the quiet one, the one who hid behind his brother's courage. When David died, Wade had learned to be brave because someone had to be. Someone had to speak for the silent ones, the forgotten ones, the children who made themselves small in hopes that smallness would keep them safe. He put the drawing back in the box and returned to the kitchen. By lamplight, he wrote a new letter to the federal marshal. This time, his words were different. Children have been taken from our county. I know where they went. I know who took them. I need help to bring justice for families who have forgotten how to remember their own grief. Wade sealed the letter and set it by the door. In the morning, he would ride to the post office and send it, no matter what secrets it might uncover. But first, he had one more place to visit. The Kowalski farm sat at the edge of the county, where the roads turned to dirt paths and the cotton fields gave way to scrub brush and pine trees. Pyotr and Pavel Kowalski were 6 years old, with pale hair and serious eyes that seemed to see more than children should see. Their parents had come from Poland with nothing but hope and strong hands, and they had built a life from the hard Mississippi soil. Wade had checked on the family every September for 3 years. The parents spoke little English, but they understood enough to know that their twins were in danger. They had built a room with no windows and a door that locked from the inside. Every night in September, they put the boys in that room and sat outside it with loaded rifles. Tonight, Wade knocked on their door just as the sun disappeared behind the trees. "Mrs. Kowalski answered, her face tight with worry. "Deputy," she said in her careful English. "Is time again?" "September time." Wade nodded. "How are the boys?" She led him to the windowless room where Pyotr and Pavel sat on a single bed, playing quietly with wooden toys their father had carved. They looked up when Wade entered, and he saw something in their eyes that made his chest ache. They looked like children who knew they were not wanted. Children who had learned to make themselves small, to speak in whispers, to disappear into corners where no one would notice them. They looked exactly like the children whose names were carved into the stone walls of Mercy House. Wade knelt down beside their bed. "Boys," he said gently, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. Has anyone ever told you about a place called Mercy House? Has anyone ever said you might go there to live?" The boys looked at each other with those serious eyes. Finally, Pavel, the smaller one, nodded. "The nice lady," he whispered. "She comes in dreams. She says there is place for children like us. Children who are too much trouble." Wade's blood turned to ice. "What nice lady?" "Sister Margaret," Pyotr said, his voice barely audible. "She says she helps children who nobody wants. She says it doesn't hurt." Outside, the September night was full of cricket songs and the whisper of wind through pine needles. But inside that small, windowless room, Wade heard only the sound of his own heart beating too fast and the terrible weight of understanding settling on his shoulders like a coat made of lead. Tomorrow he would have to make a choice between justice and mercy, between the truth and the peace of forgetting. September 15th, 1889. 7 years to the day since the first twins disappeared. Wade stood at the edge of the Kowalski farm in the hour before dawn, watching the small house where Pyotr and Pavel slept behind locked doors. The federal marshal and his men would arrive by noon, but Wade knew it would be too late. Sister Margaret would come for the boys tonight, just as she had come for all the others. He had spent the past 3 days walking through Greene County, visiting every family that had lost children. He carried with him a simple question: "Do you remember taking your twins to Mercy House?" The answers were always the same. A long pause. Eyes that looked away. Then, slowly, like watching someone wake from a deep sleep, the memories would return. Mrs. Hartwell remembered packing Mary and Martha's few belongings in a small satchel, telling them they would have a better life with Sister Margaret. Mr. Johnson remembered leading Samuel and Simon down the dirt road to Mercy House, promising them it would only be for a little while. Every parent remembered the same thing once Wade helped them see past the forgetting. They had all made the same choice, for the same reason. Their quiet twins were too much burden, too much sorrow, too much reminder of their own failures as mothers and fathers. "We thought it was mercy, Mrs. Peterson had whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We thought we were saving them from a life of being unwanted." But memory, Wade had learned, was not the same as understanding. Even when the parents remembered giving their children to Sister Margaret, they couldn't remember why they had forgotten. They couldn't explain how an entire town had lost 7 pairs of twins and convinced itself they had vanished like morning mist. That was the true horror of Mercy House. Not just that it took unwanted children, but that it made their absence feel natural, inevitable, like winter following autumn. Wade had tried to warn the Kowalskis, but his words fell on ears that couldn't hear them. They looked at him with polite confusion when he spoke of Mercy House, as if he were talking about a dream they couldn't quite remember. The forgetting had already begun, spreading through their minds like ink through water. Now, as the first pale light touched the eastern sky, Wade knew what he had to do. He walked through the cotton fields toward Mercy House, following the same path he had ridden a week ago. But this time he was not coming as a lawman seeking answers. He was coming as a brother who had lost a twin, as a man who understood what it meant to carry someone else's grief. The house looked different in the dawn light. Smaller somehow, more fragile, like a construction of paper and wishes that might blow away with the first strong wind. But the oak trees around it had grown thicker, their branches reaching toward the ground like arms embracing something precious. Wade knocked on the door, and Sister Margaret opened it as if she had been waiting for him. "Deputy," she said softly, "you've come back. I've come to see the room behind the iron door." She nodded, stepping aside to let him enter. The house was quiet now, no children's voices drifting from the upper rooms. Wade followed Sister Margaret through the hallways to the basement stairs. But this time he noticed something he had missed before. The children's drawings on the walls were not pictures at all, but windows, small rectangles cut into the wood and covered with glass. Behind each one was darkness, as if the drawings were looking into rooms that had no light. In the basement, Sister Margaret lit the lamp and led him to the iron door. Up close, Wade could see that the metal was old, older than anything else in the house. It was covered with symbols that might have been writing, or prayers, or warnings in a language he didn't recognize. "Some doors," Sister Margaret said, "are not meant to keep things out. They're meant to keep things in." She turned the heavy key in the lock. The door opened silently, revealing a room filled with soft golden light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The air smelled of flowers and fresh earth and something else. Something that reminded Wade of his mother's voice singing lullabies. Inside the room, 14 children sat in a circle on the floor. 7 pairs of twins, holding hands and smiling with the peaceful expressions of children who had finally found safety. They looked exactly as they had when they disappeared. Mary and Martha Hartwell still 7 years old, Samuel and Simon Johnson still 9. Time had not touched them in this place. When they saw Wade, they turned toward him with eyes full of starlight. "Deputy Wade," said Mary Hartwell, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We've been waiting for you." Wade felt his knees go weak. He reached for the doorframe to steady himself. "Waiting for me? You understand," said Samuel Johnson. "You know what it means to lose half of yourself." Wade looked at Sister Margaret, who stood beside him with tears streaming down her face. "What is this place?" "It's where broken things become whole again," she whispered. "Where children who were never truly wanted learn what it means to be loved." Martha Hartwell stood up and walked to Wade. She was translucent now, made of light and memory, but when she took his hand, He could feel her small fingers warm against his palm. "We're not dead, Deputy," she said gently. "We're just waiting. Waiting for our families to remember how to love us. Waiting for the world to become a place where quiet children matter as much as loud ones." "But your parents," Wade said, his voice breaking. "They're searching for you. They're grieving." "Are they?" asked Simon Johnson. "Or are they grieving the idea of us? The children they thought we should have been instead of the children we were?" Wade closed his eyes, and suddenly he could see the truth that had been hiding in plain sight. The parents weren't mourning their lost children. They were mourning their own guilt. They had given their twins away because caring for quiet, difficult children was too hard, and then convinced themselves the children had been stolen to ease the pain of that choice. "They sent us here because they couldn't love us enough," said Anna Peterson, her voice full of understanding rather than anger. "But Sister Margaret taught us that was never our fault. Love is not something children have to earn." Wade opened his eyes and looked at the circle of children. They were fading now, becoming more light than substance, but their smiles remained bright and warm. "What happens now?" he asked. Sister Margaret closed the iron door gently, and the basement returned to ordinary darkness. "Now the forgetting ends," she said. "The federal marshal will come, and he will find the records I kept. He will find the letters the parents wrote, asking me to take their unwanted children. He will find the truth that this county buried so deep it forgot its own shame." They climbed the stairs together, Wade's legs shaking with each step. At the top, Sister Margaret walked to the front door and opened it. Outside, the sun was rising over Greene County, painting the cotton fields gold and green. "The children will be remembered now," she said. "Not as victims, but as teachers. They will teach this county what happens when we forget that every child, quiet or loud, easy or difficult, deserves to be loved for exactly who they are." Wade stepped out onto the porch and turned back. Sister Margaret was already fading, becoming part of the morning light that streamed through the old oak trees. "Will I see them again?" he asked. "The children." Her voice came to him like an echo from a great distance. "Look for them in every quiet child who needs someone to speak for them. Look for them in every moment when you choose love over convenience. They are not gone, Deputy. They have just learned to live in the spaces between forgetting and remembering." The house disappeared with the morning mist, leaving only an empty lot overgrown with wildflowers that bloomed in pairs, 14 different colors, growing side by side in the rich, dark earth that remembers everything. Years later, when Wade was an old man, he would plant a garden in that spot, tending it with hands that never forgot the warmth of Martha Hartwell's fingers or the sound of children's laughter echoing through rooms made of light. And sometimes, on September mornings when the air was still and the world was quiet, visitors would swear they could hear the faint sound of children playing. Not lost, but found, not forgotten, but finally truly remembered.